What's happening? It's Jason, one of your three hosts for Dubious Knowledge. Welcome back. This is the show where we talk about lore, and we are working our way through the core 20 gods of Golarion. With me, I have both of my co-hosts. Cori, what's going on? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Jason. Ready for the holidays. We're recording this prior to the holidays. You'll hear it after the holidays, but such is the magic of time.
Yeah. Timey-wimey bullshit. Yeah, we got a crazy episode. What better, like I said, and I teased you all at the end of last episode, what better way to start off 2024 than the rough beast himself? But before we do that, Mike, you're here. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. I was really anxious about that intro when you mentioned Rovagug and the rough beast. I'm like, what could Jason say about me that he could link into Rovagug? But you didn't, so thank you for that. Also, happy holidays, everybody. Hope you had a great holiday season because you're going to be listening to this after the holidays.
Yeah. Dude, I wouldn't do you dirty like that. You don't want to destroy the world just because.
Not just because, no.
You have reasons, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's Bernard and Pete mainly, and my soon-to-be wife. I would destroy I would ruin the world for them, but...
Yeah, and with us, we have a very special guest, Sam from Pod Against the Machine. How are you?
Hi, how's it going?
Doing well. So you, when I reached out to you to see if you wanted to talk about one of the core 20 deities, Rovagug was not what I thought you were going to pick. Out of all the ones that were still available, because I think at that point, only like 5 or 6 had been chosen. Rovagug was not. So I gotta ask you right up front, why Rovagug?
Well, the thing is, like, you call it the core 20, but really it's like the core 19 over here, all these sort of piddly little gods, and then over on the right, sort of up on a pedestal, is just this giant spider worm thing that's going to eat all of the other ones. I mean, Rovagug's just, he's special. He's just a big chompy boy.
You're absolutely not wrong. But yeah, before we get into all that, tell us real quick about your show, so the listeners can know a bit about Pod Against the Machine.
All right. Well, yep, I am the GM on Pod Against the Machine. Most of the time we're a Pathfinder First Edition actual play, doing the Iron Gods Adventure Path, which is the one that, in addition to all your standard fantasy fare, also has aliens and robots mixed into it. So you have like the birth of Starfinder. A lot of the stuff that was in the core of Starfinder made its first appearance in this AP, and we actually did a side story in Starfinder exploring the back matter of the books and stuff, because it's all very interconnected and very cool. We also have played a couple other side games. We played Call of Cthulhu, which by the time this is out, that will finally have finished, as our one shot goes 8 episodes. And
isn't that always the way, though?
Yeah.
There's 4 GMs right here. That's always the way.
And we've played a couple other games over time. And then, like, on our Patreon, we have audio fiction, which is just stories that I wrote, and some of the other people on the podcast write stories and record audio versions of those. I also was just on, and am probably still on, based on the timing, STF and Friends over at the Strange Table Fellows Network. We're playing Traveler, which is a lot of fun. And I think that's all of the things.
Yeah.
How did you like Traveler's character creation? I know this is a total aside, but as someone who loves all systems, I find Traveler's character creation system probably the most fun to play. It's more fun to play in the game, really.
It was amazing. That was like 3.5 hours of just laughing and having a great time, like building a absolutely nonsensical story.
It tells you what to do and you just do it, right?
Yeah.
And I do have to
places it takes you.
I do have to quick plug that on the 25 North podcast, the voice of Harold of Rumplank is one of Sam's players, Jeff, on Pod Against the Machine.
Good old Jeff.
Yeah. So yeah, Rovagug, Cori, before we get into the Rough Beast, the Destroyer of Worlds, let's go through the basics.
All right. Tonight, we talked about Rovagug, the Rough Beast, the Destroyer, the Enemy of Gods, the Great Destroyer, the Unmaker, the Worldbreaker. The darkness bound at the world's heart is real, and its name is Rovagug. How long our world can withstand his tireless thrashing, none can tell, from Chronicles of the Darklands. Rovagug's been imprisoned since the Age of Creation. He seeks only to destroy creation and all other gods. Believed to be imprisoned in a state of torpor somewhere deep within Golarion, his increasingly restless stirrings are taken by many to be the cause of volcanic activity and earthquakes. His edicts are to destroy all things, and to free Rovagug from his prison. His anathema are to create something new, to let material ties restrain you, and to torture a victim or otherwise delay its destruction. Areas of concern are wrath, disaster, destruction. His pre-master alignment was chaotic evil. In 1E, he allowed chaotic neutral worshippers. In pre-master 2E, he allowed chaotic evil and neutral evil worshippers. Domains, first edition, he had chaos, evil, destruction, weather, war, with subdomains of blood, catastrophe, demon, protean, rage, and storms. Don't really get the demon and protean part, but say lovey. Second edition, he has air, destruction, earth, and Zell, with alternative domains of swarm and void. Favored weapon is Great Axe. Holy symbol is a mod spider, but he has several other variations. We'll talk about that a little later. His realm is the Dead Vault, which is a demiplane stuck dead center in the center of Golarion. We'll also talk about that a little more later. And that's the basics before we start talking about the nitty gritty.
Yeah, so quick remind me, and this might be a question for Sam and Mike, since you two are currently GMing first edition. Did the Great Axe actually have the Sunder trait, or was that the Great Club?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Because that's I'm guessing that's why the Great Axe is the favored weapon.
Also, it does
A lot of damage.
the most damage.
Yeah.
It's a D12 weapon.
With
And
a
Great
nice
Sword was
time
already taken by
recruit.
Gorham.
True. Good point.
They couldn't boulder parchment shears for it.
I think the just sort of seeming brutality of a gigantic axe kind of plays into it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I do not see Sunder on Great Axe.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if that was the reason, because that would be a kind of a cool tie-in if it was. Actually using it, because Sunder, if you're a listener and you're not sure what Sunder was, Sunder just gave you the ability to actually break things easier with that weapon. You legitimately could break things easier, whether that was armor, shields, doors. It was a pretty cool trait.
Yeah, so worshippers of Rovagug tend to just be a little touched in the head, you might say. Because to worship a god who embodies the destruction of the universe, you kind of have to be. It kind of falls right alongside Grotus. you don't really find a whole lot of perfectly well-balanced folk worshipping those two gods.
Well, it's people who really know what they want, and what they want is nothing anymore. I mean, yeah, it's that a lot of different, like, basically cultish sects around Golarion, and then I found a lot of monsters that worship Rovagug,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, makes sense.
You know, there's orcs. A lot of orcs worship him, mostly because his wakening when Starfall happened is what started pushing them out of the Darklands alongside the dwarven quest for Sky. So like those three things are all intertied together, and some Kolo worship him. Most worship Lamashtu, but there are sects of Kolo that worship Rovagug instead.
Yeah, there's if we're talking worshippers, there's a really cool passage here in the text of an Inner Sea Gods that I want to quote that kind of speaks to it. And as I was reading it, it made me laugh. So I'll read it here. Quote, "Those who truly follow the rough beast do not care about love, honor, loyalty, or material gain. They do not care about remaking the world in their own image. The only thing they seek is utter destruction. They cannot be reasoned with, nor can they be trusted. They are almost always a little bit insane, as they worship the act of destruction with no real expectation of reward. They are generally a damaged and criminal lot, maniacs and berserkers who destroy not for personal gain, but for the thrill of the act itself."
I think one of the things that struck me about the worshippers was that there's a section in Inner Sea Gods that talks about it, where some of the lesser worshippers of Rovagug expect him to reward them at the end and to be at his right hand, but the deeper you get in the church, the more you see, oh no, that's not going to happen. I'm just going to get destroyed with everybody else when he wakes up. And that is perfectly okay, and that's what I want.
Yeah, and as his anti-paladin code says, the tools of destruction will be destroyed last. So, you know, you be a tool of destruction, and your reward is that you get to see everything else go before you do.
Rovagug is very elder god-like in that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there's
Yeah.
cultic, you know, just talking about Call of Cthulhu, that it's, you know, there's the worshippers of the elder gods, and they're like, well, I'm going to summon, you know, Yog-Sothoth, and it's like, well, do you realize that you're going to die last, right? But yeah, I get to see everyone die before me. It's like, it's not going to be any better for you.
Who is basically the Rovagug equivalent in the elder gods? Starts with an A.
Azathoth.
Azathoth, yeah.
Well, Azathoth is a little bit weird in Golarion lore because it's a totally unthinking thing that just isn't even aware of its own existence, and I think kind of it's just like a blob of chaos basically floating out there. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like Rovagug, except Rovagug is more motivated.
Rovagug
signed on for that MLM.
Yeah,
it would be Cthulhu then, because Cthulhu is the final, the big, you know, the one who wants to destroy things.
But just wants to make the world crazy.
Yeah, but by doing so, it destroys it. All elder gods want that, you know, except for the Yellow King. But that's a different. That's the next core 20. After we get done this core 20, we'll probably go to the elder gods. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna do an extended episode on the elder gods with Alex and Cynthia.
In Mythic Realms, which was a 1E campaign setting book, one of the 100-page splat books, there was an extended section on the Pit of Gormaz, which we'll talk about a little later as well. But while we're talking about worshippers, there was a worshipper of Rovagug that was one of the snake folk that lived in the caverns near the pit, and she got the bright idea in her head that the way to win her war against the redacted, that race of elves that we can no longer talk about, and the Harengar that she was fighting, there was like 3 cultures that were all at war for this spot in the Darklands right by the pit. She thought that the best way for her to win this war was to summon one of the spawn of Rovagug. And it kind of fits into that the weapons of destruction will be destroyed last bit that Sam mentioned, because although it's the exact opposite in that she summoned a spawn of Rovagug thinking, I can unleash it on my enemies and win this war, and it destroyed her civilization first and then wiped out the other 2, and then made its way to the surface to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, you could definitely summon it and end the war.
And it did. It ended the war.
Yeah.
Very good. Well done.
I think, to paraphrase Jason from The Good Place, anytime you have a problem, you summon a spawn of Rovagug and you immediately have a different problem.
Molt was her name.
Yeah, the passage that speaks to that is achieving the goals. They're talking about the priests of Rovagug. Achieving their goals will only bring destruction, and those who eventually free their god will receive no reward except the right to be consumed first in his final rampage.
Oh wait, no, Molt was a different worshipper of Rovagug. Sorry. It was
Podcast over. It
was Hathras who was the serpent folk, and she summoned Chemnosit, the monarch worm.
Oh, the monarch worm.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the monarch now.
Different monarch.
The monarch worm made quick fodder of all 3 empires, starting with her own, and left only destruction in its wake. Afterward, its taint left the tunnels filled with twisted, milk-eyed members of all 3 races, infused with Rovagug's essence. Delightful.
So, this is a good pivot. This is a good pivot because we're talking about the worshippers of Rovagug. Now, priests of Rovagug. It's interesting because he doesn't really. Well, here's a common thing among the evil deities. He doesn't really give a shit about people who worship him. He just wants to be set free. And he's like, okay, if these people are going to worship me, they're going to be the ones that set me free. So, sure, why not? But he really doesn't care. There's a passage here that says his intervention in the world must be through his violent priests and, more infamously, through his titanic spawn, which act as his host of catastrophic heralds. And that's really all he cares about. Is just like, okay, if you worship me, just go commit acts of wanton destruction and violence.
Yeah.
I can't get out of this. I can't get out of this prison. So, I mean, at least somebody destroy something.
But I can keep squirting out babies.
Yeah. He can't move either. He's pinned in. We'll get to that later, I have a feeling.
Yep.
Hell of an itch. He has that one itch right in the back right here, and he can't get to it. And he's driving him nuts. He's just popping out kids trying to get that itch, and they never do it.
So it's like, is it this? This is just kind of a philosophical, hypothetical question. So you think it's like this, like, psychic ability that he's just kind of empowering his priests with magic?
Well, for what I've seen, he, like, when someone makes a connection with him, now that they're able to, which wasn't always the case, he's just constantly, like, whispering in their minds. And I assume that is taking the form of just, like, an almost incomprehensible language of pure destruction, but, like, that grants them the power, just that link. And
No, Sam, what it is it is constantly playing Limp Bizkit's Break Stuff on repeat in their brain.
Oh,
At all
I thought
times.
you were going to go somewhere else with that, but that's a good one too. I was going to say all they hear is
I'd be going insane if I had Fred Durst in my head 24/7.
Fred Durst was the same for
cranked
hearing Fred Durst 24/7. So I mean, it would work with anybody.
The irony is that in preparation for this podcast, while I was reading on Rovagug, I was listening to early 2000s new metal, but none of it was Limp Bizkit.
It was the Queen of the Damn soundtrack.
No, it was Linkin Park and Evanescence.
That's
Ooh.
okay.
That's good.
You win.
That's
Those are
good
two
stuff.
good ones.
And early corn's good too. I enjoyed early corn. Yeah.
Baby corn.
We are all of
We
an
call them
age.
baby corn.
We are all of an age.
We call them baby corns.
All right.
So yeah, he has no friends. All his priests.
Lots
just
of
want-
enemies.
He has no
Yeah.
friends.
It says right here he has no friends or
Oh.
allies. Once he's devoured a world, he will surely turn on even his own spawn, even his own babies that he squirted out.
oh yeah,
He's going to eat them.
Jason, this is going to be a vampire reference that I'm sure you're going to get, but he's an Andaluvian.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens when you wake up an Andaluvian. You get eaten first.
Yeah, he's gonna eat his own babies because they didn't scratch that itch like he wanted them to.
I'm telling you, scratch that
even
itch.
if they had,
True.
He still might
that's
do it.
not
Yeah,
going to
you're right.
save you for long.
And on that, like, with no friends, there's nowhere where you can openly worship Rovagug. There's no Nidal, there's no Geb. You don't openly worship him. Like, there is a list of centers of worship, but, like, even there, it's not open. You know, it's Belkzen and the Darklands and Katapesh and the realm of the Mammoth Lords and Osirian and Kadira. It's places where his influence has touched, basically. But open worship is just unheard of anywhere except for really at the Pit of Gormaz. Because at the Pit of Gormaz, there is no civilization. There is nobody to frown upon you worshiping him.
Yeah. So the way I thought about this is, if we go back to think of like the Roman Empire after Constantine made it Christian, and you had these like little pockets of pagan cities that started like sprouting up all around the throughout the Roman Empire, and the Romans would come down and just like burn those to the ground and just squash them. That's basically what's happening here, is that anytime basically anybody notices like a shrine or a temple or any building that has anything to do with Rovagug, doesn't matter who they are, whoever's in charge of that town, whether it's Nidal, whether it's Cheliax, or, you know, like even these big evil empires, or it's Andoran, they will just come down and just quash that right away. Because as we'll find out, everybody, even Zon-Kuthon, even Asmodeus, even Lamashtu, like everybody, nobody likes Rovagug because he ultimately wants to eat them.
He was also Dubral at the time. He
But
wasn't
but
Zon-Kuthon, yeah.
still, like
even
Zon-Kuthon
after.
right now doesn't want Rovagug to wake up.
Yeah.
And he wants everybody
He
to
could
hurt.
very easily help to wake him by, removing the star towers that he placed. But he's not going to do that. And, you mentioned that temples of Rovagug are torn down wherever they're erected, if they're ever erected. And that's a shame, if only because in Inner Sea Gods, there is a picture of a temple for every deity. It's just part of the art order for that book is they got a temple or a shrine for each deity commissioned. And the temple to Rovagug that they commissioned is metal as fuck.
It really is. It is so cool.
It is
so
spiky
cool.
and has this giant spider on the door that is the symbol of Rovagug with the gaping maw. And it's just a badass temple. And I'm like, but that literally doesn't exist because in the section right before you showed this picture, you mentioned that they are immediately torn down.
Yeah.
Also, erecting a temple like this in the first place is literally anathema to the deity himself because it is creating something. So, it looks so badass, but it literally cannot exist because the person who builds it loses all of their powers and probably has Rovagug's major curse.
That's such a good point.
No matter how many Tool music videos they could film there, it's just not to be. But this might be those deluded lower level worshippers who think they're doing the right thing because they don't get it yet, and then a clip off comes out of the ground and eats them, or something.
The art is really it's like reminiscent of almost what's the kind of like Baltic construction, so influences of Eastern Europe and the Middle Eastern. You got have these Middle Eastern dome ceilings, but you also have the Eastern European wall styles. It's very cool.
And lots of spikes.
Lots of spikes. Lots of spikes. So
not enough spikes, if you ask me. For the you know what I mean, the rough beast. There's not enough spikes.
You have the Dracula poles, the spikes that he would. The actual son of Dracul would spear his enemies. Yeah. But yeah, you bring up the centers of worship. They do call out two particular historical temples or holy sites. We brought up one, the Pit of Gormas in Casmarin. The one before that was the one that captured my attention, which is a pyramid in Osirian called the Pyramid of Kamaria. It's in the city of On in Osirian. And they say here that it's a pyramid that caps the tomb of a pharaoh who openly worshipped Rovagug. The central shaft of the pyramid extends down into the Darklands, which is not beyond the scope of this discussion, and is used by cultists to trade with the monsters of the deep. So that is absolutely fascinating, and I wonder, I don't know enough about my Osirian lore to know if that pyramid still stands. So
I think it does. Actually, I can while we continue talking, I can open my Osirian book and take a quick look.
Oh, is the idea that pyramid is built around a star tower and it goes all the way down, or is this
No,
like sort
so
of a facsimile start?
the sentence right before that says that any cave near a geothermal vent is considered holy to those who worship Rovagug. And so that shaft is a geothermal vent that goes down into the Darklands.
Ooh.
So they say
Said
that
pharaoh was a female pharaoh.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so I think the idea is that Rovagug's essence, like he's belching or flatulating, like his essence is coming through these geothermal vents. Because we talked about like earlier that eruptions and earthquakes are signs of Rovagug. That's what the worshippers, and so you just take that a step less extreme. So like these geothermal vents is kind of like a less extreme, much less extreme version of a volcano.
Could be
And
his
so
exhales.
What's that?
It could be him exhaling.
Yeah,
to
exhaling.
them, breathing in,
belching.
breathing out type of thing. Yeah, whatever.
Oh yeah, it's just so any geothermal activity is considered holy.
About
The Rovaguggians?
Guggians? Guggers? The Guggers? Now, the pit of Grimaz is interesting to me. Like how you mentioned the pyramid. The pyramid's really cool. But the pit is pretty crazy because, when a bit of the land is hit by a flaming scimitar thrown by a goddess, there's a lot of damage usually. There's very interesting creatures and things that live there. Like there's an area called the Crater of Carnal Joining. There is a mad void dragon who, by the way, has never met Rovagug. Not once. Not on Tinder or any of the other apps that I don't know about. But she is waiting for him to be released so she can be impregnated by Rovagug.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's also tunnels.
What?
Yeah, there's also tunnels. Go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say she thinks that she is like an omen of his return. So, she's fun.
And to circle back just briefly, the pyramid does still exist, and it is still a holy site for cults of Rovagug, who do more openly worship their deity and on, but they are kept on a very tight leash by the Ruby Prince.
Okay.
Very tight leash.
Oh man, the GM in me has so many like ideas on how I could use this for a story. I am going into the Darklands for Sky King's Tomb.
There's actually another place that on Golarion, but not really on the surface of Golarion, where there's worship of Rovagug, which is in the Eye of Abednego at the bottom of the sea. There's a cult of Rovagug led by a Scylla named Ertlitar, who's like a priestess of Rovagug, who's also like a CR like 23 monster in her own right. But she has like scum and stuff, like an army of scum at her beckoning, and they all worship Rovagug, and she believes that the eye is like symbolic of his destruction or something along those lines. Like the never-ending storm is, part of Rovagug's deal. Forget Aaron, and it's all about the big bug man.
I'm sure Besmara had something to say about that.
Especially because I changed the lore on the eye for my own personal game.
Oh, you're gonna offend the beast?
Yeah, apparently.
Hey, what's he gonna do? He's stuck.
Yeah. He's stuck.
The pit
He'll
also
send a Tarrasque at me, which is not cool.
Well, the pit also, there's way worse that he could throw at you, by the way. The pit also has a giant poop from one of the spawn of Rovagugs. One of his spawn.
A poop mountain. Literal mountain of shit.
Yep. A section of tunnels that had a war involving genie, serpent folk, and ninja. Like
What?
that was the term they used. That was the term I read. Ninja. I'm assuming they mean like the dark ones. That's what I'm assuming.
Where did you read that?
That was one of the many videos I've watched today, catching up on Rovagug. It was, I think, by Venture Captain.
Because I think
Would it
they're
be
talking
Caribbean?
about the one that I spoke about earlier, which was the Broken Empire,
The Broken Empire. Okay.
which was Dark Folk, Oreads, and Serpent Folk.
Dark folks do kind of look like ninjas. You know, they have the shadowy cloakiness. Some do.
Yeah, they have
Mine
the
would.
mask,
Yeah.
the bandage wrapping all over their face.
I think it
and
might have
stuff.
been more of a jokey type of thing than actual, like, from TN.
True. Oh, yeah.
But I've been reading a lot about TN for no reason whatsoever, Jason.
Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating. I think what I would have a hard time role playing somebody who worships Rovagug, simply because the whole idea of you need to destroy your shit in order to like I so the you would have to, so the one of the okay, let me get my thoughts in order here. One of the big draws for me, at least, when playing this kind of a game is being able to level up and accumulate items and getting more powerful items, and then using those items in really cool, interesting ways, different ways, and using them to figure out puzzles and stuff and whatnot. As a worshiper of Rovagug, you can't create things. You can't, you have to break things. They even say here that as clergy will use magic scrolls as tinder to start bonfires. They will use magic items as sacrifices in pits. And it just, I would have a real hard time worshiping or playing a worshiper of Rovagug.
Yeah, it's a hard one to be a player character of, but it's a really easy and fun one to be a GM of.
True.
Yeah, I think the options for a player character of Rovagug are extremely limited. I mean, even in like an evil AP, like it still wouldn't really fit motivation wise unless you're just basically hired to destroy things as some kind of mercenary. But as a villain of a GM, like in a GM's toolbox, there's a lot of potential there, especially when you get into the sort of subtler things like Rovagug tricking Sarenrae's worshippers into getting themselves destroyed by their own god. Stuff like even though it is the god of just endless destruction, there's actually a little bit of a cerebral element in there because he's had to get creative over the centuries because he can't do it himself anymore.
Yeah,
True.
like I made an anti-paladin of Rovagug as a foil for a Curse of the Crimson Throne party way back when. It was originally a player character that was a paladin of Sarenrae, and when that player left the campaign, him and I talked about how to write him out, and that's what he wanted to do, was have his paladin fall. And so wrote in a paladin of Rovagug. I've since recycled that anti-paladin into an anti-paladin of Nurgle to fit a different campaign. But yeah, it's a fun one to play with as a GM just because it is just destruction.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be fun. When I was reading the how to play an adventurer section, immediately the thing that came to mind was, oh, well, you'd have to take the vow of poverty. Well, the vow of poverty is in 3.5 was a good aligned vow. So you couldn't take the vow of poverty as a chaotic evil character. So I was just like, how the hell would you do this?
Well,
And
his deific obedience, I think, is to destroy something worth at least 10 gold every day. Like, preferably something beautiful or sacred or fragile.
which is a lot easier than some.
Yeah. Especially the evil gods. They usually are much harder than that.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about Lamashtu's. Yeah, that one is... I don't know how you get about doing that.
See, for
Anyway.
You don't.
Yeah, you don't. You just don't.
the worship of
Anybody worshiping Lamashtu if you're going to use obediences.
But Lamashtu is way easier to play as a character than Rovagug is. Even though I could probably just do it just every time you beat somebody, every time you defeat somebody in battle, just break their shit. Like every time you beat a wizard, rip their spell book up. You know, that kind of thing. Take
True.
the focus.
Hell, rip
away.
a page out of their spell book. That's 10 gold right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean that's just more of the thing. Just take I beat this wizard down, and as they lay dying, you just see them ripping and tearing, throwing up the page of the spell book, having a great time, or the person who the class that has a familiar or an animal companion. The first thing you do is go after the animal companion or the familiar. You know what I mean? It's like I'm gonna break your connection with your deity first, and then I'm gonna break you. It just might also be I'm crazy. I don't know. I could probably do it.
True.
No one let me play an evil character again. That's why I GM. I can play all the evil characters I want.
So let's get to lore. Let's get to the lore part. Real quick, Sam, you brought up before we get into the real lore and story and that kind of stuff. You brought up the fact about what Rovagug looks like, and there's a section here about his true form. Did you read that part, Sam?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
possible.
Because here, let me quick go over that. Let's talk about what he looks like, and I'll quick start with what the text says, because the text reads that Rovagug's true form is maddening, a miles-long worm with countless limbs stretching along his length and grasping from within his mouth. Various parasitic creatures cling to his skin and spill forth from his wounds. Some of them are slug-like or insectile. Many are swarms. That's the swarm domain that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Of thousand-legged vermin. And others take more unspeakable shapes. These parasites voraciously consume those foolish enough to be caught in the wake of Rovagug's spilled blood, then die, unable to sustain their own existence apart from the god's flesh. So we have a worm, that's 5 miles long, who's
Somewhere Ellie just giggled and she doesn't know why.
who has these wounds that are spewing forth swarms of parasitic insects. That is literally his blood. His blood is swarms of insects. And they cannot exist apart from him because they survive by feeding on his flesh. That is just nightmare fuel.
It just needs a hug.
Do you want to hug him, Sam? Do you want to hug him? Do you want to be the volunteer? You want to be the tribute?
Don't ask that, because Sam would say yes.
He's also
Just think of all the things that it can swallow whole.
Yeah.
entire cities. He's also coated in rackworms, which are, I think, 80-foot long, slug-like creatures with no eyes and like hundreds of teeth and claws and mouths that are constantly eating him. And he doesn't care. But as they eat him, they get hungrier with every bite. This is in the lore. And occasionally he'll like shift and accidentally throw them against the walls of the dead vault, and they'll burrow their way out and then basically cause an apocalypse somewhere, because those things alone are so monstrous and powerful that very few things can stand against them. And those are just his lice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, those are his lice.
Well, and like we talked about how he's a giant worm, but also giant worms just kind of pop up around him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the Mountain of Awful. OFFAL awful, not AWFUL awful. But
like innards awful, like organs awful.
Both apply.
Yeah.
It is.
Both apply.
It is
but
an
both
awful,
apply, because this is the literal mountain of shit that Mike talked about earlier. That there is a passage that states that purple worms frolic throughout this this mountain.
Frolic.
They're so happy.
Like Bambi.
Including the crawling hunger, which is a creature that looks like a normal purple worm, except for the dozens of clawed crab-like legs that sprout from between its body segments. These claws give it a climb speed of 20 feet and allow it to walk almost silently on land rather than with its normal dragging, slithering mode of movement. Because its legs reach in all directions, it can pluck creatures off its back or anywhere along its length, passing them forward to its hungry mouth. Crawling hunger can only be appeased with food, anyone calling it, because this is one of the creatures that can be summoned via planar ally in first edition if you are a worshipper of Rovagug.
Holy shit. Really?
It's gonna be pretty high level for that one.
He can only be appeased with food. Anyone calling for it for service should have at least a half a dozen animals or other sacrifices of at least medium size to keep it from immediately devouring its summoner. Gifts of food, creating magic items such as rings of sustenance or sustaining spoons, are also reasonable payment. The creature eats them, staving off the ravenous emptiness for a few days before it digests the magic items.
You know, when a creature has a proper noun for has a name, you know it's going to be bad. It's never good when they name a creature.
Just has arms everywhere that it just... Nom.
If it has a
It
title,
can
it's
do the-
dangerous.
It can do the citizen railgun with itself, just passing and passing and passing and passing.
Except for it's in the mouth, not into a wall.
Yeah. It's all one interact action, too, so... I don't know that I'm not looking at a stat block, but I assume so.
It's a 2 action in Pathfinder 2, okay? Everything good happens in 2 actions.
That's true.
And it gives it that 1 action to swallow something whole.
So I think we've touched on this a couple times, but he basically all the gods got together because dude decided to come on to Golarion, and they said, nope, we don't want that.
Oh, not just Golarion. He said his eyes. He said his eyes specifically, like he was eating stuff everywhere, and they were like, "Whatever, we'll keep sending you back to the abyss whenever." And then he set his eyes on Golarion, Earth, as in where we are right now, and Andrafa, which is from the back matter of Iron Gods. And once they're like, okay, these are 3 heavily populated places with burgeoning like societies and stuff, this is where we have to draw the line. And I guess Golarion got the short straw as being the place where the final battle would take place.
Good,
Imagine he could be at the center of our planet right now had they done it here instead.
we don't have a
Maybe he
Saren
is.
Ray.
Yeah. The gods all gathered, including some that we don't even remember the names of because they died in the fight.
That's the part I wanted to touch on.
And
They mentioned here that
eaten.
dozens of other gods took part in this.
Lost to history, and
But yeah, they're
Rovagug's
gone.
stomach.
Well,
We don't know who they are because they don't exist anymore. Because Rovagug, like, he's picking them out of his teeth still.
Is that something that happens with Rovagug? Like Rovagug's special, that if he devours you, you cease to exist in perpetuity. Like in history, your name is gone, right? Was that maybe?
No,
know
I don't
that
think
that's never
so, but
specifically
it
called
happened
out.
so long ago there's no living
yeah.
record of it.
Yeah.
Like, this happened well before Aridin was even out of diapers.
Oh, he would have fucked that up anyway. No, Aridin.
But, yeah,
He
like,
would have tried to alley-oop the keys to Asmodeus and then
Just
like
with-
flubbed it.
Just with the term "the Unmaker" is why I thought that. That's just might just be Mike headcanon that if Rovagug devours you, you are unmade entirely.
It's certainly possible because, like, they have, like, he ate these planets. The planets don't have names. He ate the world where Asmodeus killed his brother, and that world doesn't have a name, I think. And all these gods that fought against him, and the ones who fought on his side as well, in the hopes that they would be spared, all gone. No name. No memory of them remains.
Yeah, no record.
I do like that Callistria's role was to distract him, so, like, my only implication there is that even Rovagug gets horny.
Well, he has all them kids, of course. He's got all them
I
kids.
mean, that's canon. We saw all the spikes at his temple. Yeah, but they seem to really call out like Saren Ray directly in the Rovagug passage, much more so than in the Saren Ray part of this
Right.
book. Yeah, so like
Like,
Rovagug,
they kind of gloss over it in her section, but in his, they're like, no, he hates her, and her specifically.
yeah,
Yeah,
Like-
he hates everyone, but he hates Saren Ray.
He really hates Saren Ray.
like when you read Saren Ray's part, she's like, "Oh yeah, you know, she helped to imprison Rovagug, no big deal." But when you read Rovagug's part, it's like Saren Ray is like the bane of my existence, and every time I get an option to tell you about how much I hate Saren Ray, I am really going to call it out.
Didn't she do the lion's share of the fighting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
she
that-
did the actual fight.
She
part of
hurt
it.
him.
She-
That's why he got mad.
Yeah, she hurt him, and she cut the gash in the earth
Mhm.
that he was sealed inside of.
Sister Sarah.
And, like, but then I think part of that, Jason, is the order of the book. Because
Yeah, that could be. That's a good point.
it's alphabetical order, so if you're reading the book just in order, you're reading Rovagug's section first. So by the time you get to Saren Ray's, they don't want to just rehash that.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
But then again, it's also a reference book on the gods. So I don't know a lot of people, aside from myself, who will sit down with a book on the gods and then just read it cover to cover. You go for the ones that you like first, and
Right.
like bounce around rather than
Poor
reading
rascal.
cover
No
to
one
cover.
read his
So
stuff.
either argument works. Of why didn't they mention more of it in Saren Ray's passage? Who knows?
I
But
mean, kind of
still.
the defining thing of Rovagug's story is all of these gods coming together, and Saren Ray is the center of that. So I think she's his most meaningful relationship amongst the gods, really. You know,
Her
Well, I
best
mean,
enemy.
They're frenemies, yeah.
She's in his
she's
burn
the one
book.
she's the one who gave him that badass scar that he's telling all his buddies about.
Okay. I wanted to
Only
save
the
this.
scar is on the planet.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the world.
And he doesn't have
Rovagug
buddies.
is just a big version of Rita Repulsa from Power Rangers. He sends one of his spawn at a time. All he would have to do is send all of them at once, and it would be over. But he only sends one at a time, and then it gets smacked down. And he's like, "Well, I'll build another one." He's basically Rita Repulsa from Power Rangers, but 5-foot long worms.
It's less
Make
that
it work.
he sends them and more that they just find their way to the surface
That is
one at
also
a time.
true. Yeah,
Because
Probably-
they're going back to the section on the Pit of Ormas, the lowest section of the pit, the deepest part closest to Rovagug, is known as the Bones of the Challenger. And this is where the sloping stretches of volcanic earth are littered with strange ivory monuments, some nearly a quarter-mile tall. These are the bones of the Challenger, all that remain of a gargantuan creature from heaven that descended into the pit to take on all of the spawn of Rovagug that were currently there at once. Unfortunately for the zealous creature, whose true nature is still a mystery, foolishly, he underestimated the combined might of the rough beast's most deadly offspring. The slain beast's massive skeleton now adorns the lava-drenched walls of the pit's lowest reaches. The bones' immunity to fire prevent them from being completely destroyed by the constant flow of molten earth. Yes?
Just
Giant Angel decided, I'm gonna go solo all of these things, and then got laughed at.
Hey, he found out.
So yeah, but yeah, I guess we're going in reverse order. So, where the hell is he from? Do we have any record of where the hell Rovagug came from?
Maybe Rovagug's
I think
always-
Sam said it best earlier.
Yeah, before we started recording. Yeah.
And I won't repeat it now. I mean, I think according to Concordance of Rivals, like when Pharasma took her first steps into the universe and there was some gnawing terror already out there, when she took her first steps, that spawned the gods, and it's not really known if Rovagug spawned forth from her and was absorbed by whatever that terror was, or if it was already a part of it. Nobody really knows. We just know that it was one of the first things to exist after the survivor came into the universe and started making stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, all they say here in the text is Rovagug tore into existence while the cosmos was still young, and that's
Through
it.
the abyss, probably.
Yeah.
Just he
Yeah,
tore
well,
his
Almost
way into
assuredly
existence.
from the outer rifts.
Well, the Outer Rifts didn't really have any sort of extent yet that early on. Rovagug's first job was digging the abyss by eating into some infinite primordial something and just digging and digging and digging. So the whole reason that infinite plane exists as a never-ending pit is just from him chopping his way down.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably one of those very Lovecraftian. I mean, Rovagug existed before Jacobs brought the Elder Gods to Pathfinder, so this was probably his version of an Elder God who just they just kind of existed beyond comprehension.
Rovagug is definitely one of the deities from Jacob's homebrew that made its way over to Golarion. Just like Sarenrae. So
Yeah. And it's very much an Elder God stand-in. it shares so many characteristics with that
Azathoth and-
Lovecraftian horror. That's all you see with these unspeakable terrors that you can't even look upon, and
that gods can't even kill, like more powerful than deities. Like it got to
You
the
can
point
only
where
hope to contain him.
exactly like this union of deities who some of them legitimately hate each other, but they still partnered up to take this entity out. And this take all the most powerful entities in the universe, and even them all partnered up couldn't take Rovagug out. They could only contain him in this demi-plane. So it's so this is what's at the center of our world that we GM.
Causes the earthquakes, causes the volcanoes.
And I think that, the physical boundaries of the Dead Vault, which is Rovagug's tomb, are visible from Golarion if you go down low enough, and you can see Rovagug, as if he's frozen in amber, totally unmoving at the center of the earth. If you somehow, or of Golarion, if you somehow get down that low and don't burn to death, but he's not actually
eaten by one of his spawn.
Yeah. But he's not actually on the material plane. That's the barrier of a demi-plane, where if you go inside there, he's suspended from the sky, impaled on the star towers that come through the planet, and just forever hanging above it, while stuff rains off of him into the rest of the plane. All these horrible monsters that either die or escape.
And you can, it calls out that you technically can plane shift into his demi-plane. But if you do, you're never getting out.
Mike, why?
It just eats you. It eats you if you plane shift into it. You're done.
It's like saying I'm gonna jump into the shark tank. Let's see what happens. You're gonna get eaten, dude. That's what's gonna happen.
At least it'll be quick.
No, probably not. Probably not. Being
It will.
unmade, probably.
No, it will, because anathema to Rovagug is to draw out the destruction. It is quick. It is very quick if you die at the hands of Rovagug, because he just eats you.
Just being
unless you're remarkably sturdy.
Right. Unless you've got a really high con score and can hold your breath for a while. And also can take the 72 D12 of damage every 6 seconds.
So, unless you're Torag.
I've always
real quick before we get into the holy texts, I did want to bring this up because I know Cori is a fan of this minor deity, Grotus. They mention here that Grotus is often described as the god of the end times. And the hypothesis says that, for all intents and purposes, Rovagug and Grotus should dislike one another. But they don't.
Yeah, Grotus is probably the closest thing Rovi has to an actual friend.
Yeah. And there's some people there's some scholars on Golarion who speculate that they actually might be in cahoots, just because once Rovagug brings about the end of all things physical, then Grotus can feast upon all things metaphysical.
Yeah, the yin to the yang.
Yeah, they're two sides of the same coin. I think Grotus is just looming there, waiting for Rovagug to do the dirty work, which Rovagug will gladly do.
Grotus is just waiting for his best friend to get ungrounded by his mean mom and dad.
He's just hanging out in the treehouse in the backyard.
I was going to say, he's just hanging out in the boneyard. I was just going
to... Just looming there.
The fact that the scar that Rovagug left in the abyss is still there kind of bugs me out too, because in Mike headcanon here, what if Rovagug always exists? What if he is he's the destruction. He's the embodiment of destruction, just like man. The god
It's like
who was
Sandman. Sandman is dream.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And destruction is destruction.
Yeah, there's also a I know there's a deity that was killed a while in the beginning. We spoke about it before. It was a god of creation. Maybe that was the beginning, like the opposite sides of the coin to balance it out. But now in my head, he's just like one of those little the butterflies with a pin in the middle of it that people put in their walls. That people who collect butterflies and moths. That's what he is. He's just like a science project that all the gods are like, don't touch it. Leave my ant farm alone. It's just an alien ant farm, the worst type.
I like the idea of Rovagug as a kind of inevitability, as like the force of destruction that has to exist because there is creation. It's kind of another one of these balanced things, but I mean, you see it in like all sorts of things. Like in comic books, you have Galactus. Galactus has to exist to eat the planets and he's the never-ending hunger. In Transformers, you have Unicron, which is the same thing, like a godly force that consumes and always has to exist, and everything breaks if it doesn't.
DC Comics has the Anti-Monitor.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is an interesting thought. Which would explain why a union of the most powerful entities, aka like the deities, couldn't even take out, because it is a primal cosmic force that has to exist.
It'd be like destroying creation.
There's no way you can take out the law of destruction. It has to exist because things materially exist. Well, that being said, for a god of destruction and chaos, there's no real holy text. And as a matter of fact, each sect of worshippers kind of has their own version of holy texts or unholy texts, as this may be. So
yeah,
every tribe has their own preferred version of what they consider a holy text.
Yeah, and there are two that are called out specifically in the holy text section of Inner Sea Gods. One is the Cycle of the Beast, which is a rambling treatise written by a resident at the Havensguard Asylum in Caliphas. So an insane asylum inmate is just scribbling all these passages about Rovagug, and has been writing this for 20 years or so, and doesn't really get allowed visitors, but his pages make their way to the followers of the Rough Beast, and as such, he has found fame as a prophet of Rovagug, which is an interesting case of a holy text that is becoming more widely spread for the religion because it's coming from one central location.
This, to me, when I was reading it, it felt like an issue, like a run on a Batman comic book. Like the Mad Hatters in Arkham Asylum, scrawling these rambling texts that he infuses somehow, and as they go out into the world, he just becomes famous and starts like controlling people. It just felt like an issue or an episode of Batman the Animated Series or something.
Yeah,
like that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and Havensguard Asylum, I think, has other NPCs that come up elsewhere. I know I've seen that name before. I think there are other famous residents of Havengard, and now I'm digging.
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah, you see something, and it's like the little. That's like the great thing about all the lore is that it's all intertwined, and there's so many intricate little
And
details.
you fall into a wiki clickathon and emerge 6 hours later on an entirely different topic than what you started with. The other cited holy text, and I use the term text with scare quotes there, is the Red Mark of Zor. Known among many orc tribes, this mark looks like a little more than a spiraling symbol of Rovagug with its legs randomly twisted. While the image itself holds no mystical power, the superstitions among Rovagug's worshippers claim that looking at it draws the rough beast's ire down upon the viewer, cursing the viewer as bad luck or marking him or her for impending consumption by a hungry beast. So it's kind of like a yellow sign kind of thing. You know, you look at it and you are now doomed to be eaten by a purple worm. Have fun.
Yeah, it's like the ring. I found it, Sam. Mr.
too.
Thames from Carrion Crown.
Oh, that's not who I found. Shayla Aosk, a scholar of the Dominion of the Black.
Oh, well, we found two NPCs that are residents of Havengard Asylum.
Sounds like we need an adventure in Havengard Asylum.
Apparently. Which is now called
it's a
Vodavani
Pathfinder
Lodge.
Lodge.
Yeah,
Vodavani Lodge.
Vodavani Lodge.
Havengard Asylum is a Pathfinder Lodge.
Oh, wow.
It's run by venture captain Dr. Borumgand Trice.
All right.
Yeah.
I recognize the adventure captain.
Yeah. As far as holidays go, again, so we went over this. The dwarves of Golarion despise the fact that the Golarion calendar has an entire month dedicated to Rovagug and not a month dedicated to Torag. So as a dwarf, as an ancestry, they have collectively decided that Rova shall now be known as Torash. But here, in the entry on Rovagug, they explain why Rova is named as such, and it is because it is the harvest month, and that it is during that time that you mow down all the crops, simulating the destruction that the rough beast brought to the world. As the individual collectively known as Dwarf Daddy, I still don't buy that, and I am choosing to go with Torash instead of Rova, but that is a personal issue. So,
Yeah. Other than that, there aren't a whole lot of holidays associated with him. There are a couple of them that are mentioned. The waking, which typically occurs in early spring, is worshipped by orcs because it represents when when Rovagug stirred at the fall of the Starstone to cause them to start making their way upward. And then there's also a circumstance of celestial conjunctions in the night sky. There is a celebration of the last day, which typically occurs in the fall, but occasionally occurs other times throughout the year, and there may be years where it just doesn't occur at all. So it's just when certain celestial objects line up just right, some of his worshippers worship the last day.
It's because they believe that it weakens his prison.
Yeah.
That demiplane that inside of which he's pinned with star spires piercing him like acupuncture needles.
And then going on from holidays, there are a few aphorisms associated with Rovagug. Again, it calls out that because of the nature of worship of him, none of these are really widespread. And that every tribe, every clan, every worshipper may have their own variations or may have their own sayings. But these are the four that are called out in the two texts that we have, which are Inner Sea Gods and 2E Gods and Magic. The End is Now, which is all about how his worshippers believe that Golarion is slowly sickening and dying because it is his prison, and his corruption is slowly killing it until he finally breaks out and destroys the world and the universe and everything else. I Am What Gods Fear, which is a dramatic exaggeration savored by warriors who serve Rovagug, proclaiming themselves to be just as fearful or feared as their god who is chained by all the other gods. And then in Gods and Magic, we had When the Cage Crumbles, which is like a threatening portent of kind of hearkening back to that first adage of Rovagug's escape is inevitable, and when his cage crumbles, you're all going to die, and the universe is going to die alongside us. And then Nothing Holds Me is kind of hearkening back to, even though he is held in the pit, you know, he still spits up monsters all the time. Some smaller than others. The last big one that he spit up was several thousand years ago when he spit up the Tarrasque, but who knows when the next big one's gonna pop up.
Yeah. And we I know, Sam, you wanted to talk about, you already went over a bunch about the Dead Vault. Was there anything else that we wanted to touch on about in the Dead Vault? I think, yeah, Sam, you did a great job just describing it.
Yes.
He's
It's a
just
nice place.
impaled in the sky and raining down monstrosities.
Yeah, it's some of the most metal imagery possible, I think. A 5-foot-long worm beast hanging from the sky, impaled on towers, and
So it's a
5
Gore
mile
concert.
long.
5 mile, yeah. What did I say?
5 foot.
5 foot.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Tiny
That'd be
little
interesting.
baby.
What are the
Tiny
monsters
little
going?
baby.
Yeah, there was one thing I wanted to add about the amber, the giant topaz on the outside that's kind of like fossilized, you know. So if you're on the outside of this, think of Jurassic Park, you know, the mosquito inside of the amber. So like think of this massive globe of topaz, and it's ringed with black iron. So to me, that just signifies like that topaz was chiseled and cut by Torag, and these black iron rings is Gorum, like those signs of Gorum, because those are the two that fabricated the prison. There's been a few people who've seen this beyond those who were there when it happened, because they mentioned that Caden, Kalian, Milani, Xiphus, and a couple other of the gods who are, newer to Golarion. They've actually gone to the outside and looked upon Rovagug, and they've all come to that conclusion that, yes, this dude needs to be kept locked up. Because
it says something that the two gods of freedom are just like, nope, he stays right there.
Like, never mind.
I know we're under freedom.
And the god of accidental death is like, no, we're not going to kill him. He needs to stay there.
That's the last test of the Starstone. You have to go literally to the dead vault and be like, nope. Mm-mm. If you say, we should let him out, you're not a god. You lose. You fail.
Yeah. They say that any person attempting to physically reach the demiplane's exterior experiences a strange warping of space that pushes the offending party away from the barrier. So it's like you can't actually go through the barrier, to Cori's point. You need to planar travel there.
Yeah. You need to punch
and if
through.
you do, you just get eaten.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts. The plane eats you. And to segue from planes to planar allies, Rovagug doesn't have any. He doesn't have planar allies.
He has no friends. We said this.
He has a servitor race, though.
But what he has are the spawn of Rovagug. And, I think it's hilarious that every other herald that gets a stat block in Inner Sea Gods, every other herald of any god in this book is level 15. The herald, and again I'm using scare quotes because he's not actually the herald, but the herald of Rovagug is the Armageddon engine himself, the Tarask. And he clocks in at level 25. So a full 10 levels above every other herald in the book.
Oh, they made him harder.
Oh, yeah. And it's no joke for level 25 either, because regeneration 50, I think, that can't be stopped.
Yeah.
Immunity to magic.
And he's getting renamed when Monster Core comes out, right?
I think he's just going to silently get shelved.
Okay.
When Monster Core comes out. And a focus is going to move to other spawn of Rovagug.
The other spawns. Okay.
Kind of like it already kind of has. Like, the Tarask is a non-entity on Golarion because he's been asleep for thousands of years.
Yeah, focus on Ulanat as the herald, the big bad.
Yeah, or
we're gonna dive into all the 6 major spawn of Rovagug here in a second, but
yeah. But the Tarask is the last spawn of Rovagug to have climbed out of the pit. And that was 632 years before Eridan raised the Starstone. So negative 632 AR. So we're now in 4720, almost, well, by the time you're listening to this, Golarion is in 4724. So it's been over 5,000 years since the last spawn of Rovagug was an issue. Which is a good thing. But also I'm worried that it means we're due. It took the Tarask 3 months to destroy the nation of Ninshabar, and to force the elite to hide in magically shrouded Tabsagal, where they eventually succumbed to famine, disease, and suicide. After it destroyed Ninshabar, it turned west and rampaged into Avestan, destroying Opara, which, for those of you who are not as familiar with cities in Golarion, Opara is a big deal. Opara is the capital city of Taldor. And the Tarask rampaged through and destroyed it.
Mm-hmm.
He then sought Rovagug's old foes in Garund and brought about the fall of the flying city of Ko, the capital of the Shori Empire, causing it to crash into the Barrier Wall Mountains. The Tarrasque was eventually stopped and imprisoned in a cave somewhere in Avestan. Nobody knows where. There are rumors of places where it may be, including under Absalom.
Great place for it. Great place for it.
Yeah, if you were going to keep just like an active nuke, you'd want to keep it under the biggest population center in the world.
Something called the Armageddon engine under my house.
Yeah,
I mean, again, this was before Eridan raised Absalom out of the ocean, so Absalom didn't exist when the Tarrasque was...
And that'd be just like Eridan, wouldn't it?
I'm gonna put my city right on top of the Tarrasque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, where's the Tarrasque? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like, it'd be like, hey, I'm just going to build the next great Russian city right on top of where the Tunguska blast happened.
Yeah. Chernobyl? That's a great place.
So, that's the Tarrasque. Destroyed several cities and then finally got put to sleep. And is now just napping somewhere in a cave on Golarion. We're hoping that it never fucking wakes up.
All right. Mike, which one do you want to talk about, bud?
Oh, man.
I want to talk about Volnagar, but I'll let you and
I'll
Sam
let everybody
go
else
first.
take their favorite, and I'll just pick clean the bones.
I want to bitch
Sam,
about Zotani, but I already talked about the Tarrasque, so I'll let Sam or Jason go before me.
I figured you'd want to talk about Zotani. So, Sam, is there one you want to take on?
I'll go for Ulanat.
Okay, go for it.
I think Ulanat is the oldest known spawn of Rovagug. There's rumors of Gorma's itself being one that is just lost to time, but Ulanat emerged from the pit of Gorma's in minus 3923 AR and devastated poor Ninshibur long before the Tarrasque finished the job. And then it passed into Garund instead of Garund instead of Avestan, where it destroyed 6 legions of the Jiska Imperium, which is one of those ancient, like, profoundly powerful empires that no longer exists. It kept rampaging for like 300 years. When it said that Asgad, the man who would eventually found Osirian, killed Ulanat by channeling the full power of Nethys, subsequently building the city of Sothis, Osirian's capital, around his carapace. So this was a gigantic beetle monster, basically the size of like a sports stadium, that rampaged all through like several different nations before eventually being killed by straight up god power. Not just any god, but Nethys, who is pretty good at destroying things.
Yeah, the literal god of magic.
Yeah.
Like, the god of magic itself.
That can't be good for someone to do that, right? To summon the full force of a deity through them. It can't be good for you.
Well, it's got to change you.
Turned him into the first pharaoh of Osirian. It's fine.
Yeah, so it worked out for him.
Sure. I guess it worked for him.
Nothing's ever gone wrong in Osirian, so I think...
Just sitting on the golden throne, right?
But Ulanat's carapace is still there to this day, 85 centuries later. It's laid in the desert sun all this time, never weathered. And there's rumors in Sothis that it's not dead, which, you know, the spawn of Rovagug and Rovagug himself never seemed to die fully. It's just banished into a pocket realm beneath its physical body, sleeping. And cultists have been trying to free it throughout the ages, though no one succeeded so far, and all attempts have failed and been erased from official history for obvious reasons. Like
Osirian likes to do that too. Just erase things from official record.
I mean, it's probably a good idea in this case.
Yeah.
But the legend is that one day it'll be back. It'll just wake up in the middle of one of the biggest cities in the world, and everyone in that city is suddenly going to be tasked with defending the world against the giant beetle of ultimate destruction.
That's how it ends. All of them wake up under major cities. All of them are hidden under major cities because that's where people think is a good idea to place spawn of Rovagug.
And you get Independence Day immediately.
Yeah. But it works this time.
Yeah.
So the spawn that emerged out after Ulanat was Volnagar, the End Singer. Now, nobody quite knows when Volnagar arrived because Volnagar has wings. And so it kind of flew out and didn't actually go rampaging through the city, on the ground, destroying cities as it walked. It just kind of flew up out of the ground, out of the pit. And really the first recorded appearance was at the site of Holy Jatramba in 909 AR. Now, Jatramba wasn't yet founded at that point. It's just that's where they fought. And that's where it was defeated. So if this is the first recorded appearance of it, we don't quite know if this is its arrival time. And if it is its arrival time, if that correlates to its arrival time, then Volnagar is the last spawn of Rovagug. So, because it's a big question mark. Now, it's that it was defeated there. Then it was also defeated above the Zhou Mountains in 1540 AR, and once again defeated in the valleys surrounding Mount Naken in 2062 AR. Now, that was the last recorded fight with Volnagar. Everybody assumed that Volnagar was dead, even though there was no body. There was no evidence of it, and there's no horror movies on Golarion, so they don't know the horror movie rules that if you don't see a body, that means they're still alive. Everybody just assumed Volnagar was dead. That is until 4540, when a mining colony on Sargava, consisting of over 8,000 people, went completely silent. A later expedition discovered that everybody on the colony died due to a, quote, chaotic internal melee. Now, the investigation concluded that this was the work of Volnagar. So this would technically be the last known influence of one of the spawns of Rovagug. Though it's not, there's no concrete proof. It's speculation at this point. So that's why I think this is the most fascinating one. There's no body, and this is potentially speculatively the last known influence of the spawn of Rovagug.
So it goes to Marsdom. I hope everyone gets that reference. It's a movie from like probably early 2000s.
Yeah,
that's the best way. That's set chaotic internal melee. Just kind of popped that in my mind.
All right, Mike. Which one are you gonna do?
I'm going to have to take the Monarch Worm. I'm gonna say Hemnosit, but it's probably with a C because it's CH, so it's probably Chimnosit. Also known as the Great Doom or the Monarch Worm. It's one of the spawn of Rovagug, and is among the four spawn best known in the continent of Avestan. When it arrived was unknown, except that it escaped from the pit after the giant beetle Ulanat. So probably will not came out, and then there came the monarch worm right after. After breaking free from its prison, it burrowed into the Darklands, where the I don't know if they changed this, but the the deep gnome and the deep dwarf.
So the Urdefin are
Urdefin and the Snarfin. I'm terrible at that one. My Philadelphia comes out. I apologize.
Yeah.
They worshipped it, as well as the Drow and the Hagnar.
Hringar.
Thank you. I don't know what that one is.
The Hringar are the
Hringar?
dark dwarves.
Oh, they're dark dwarves
Formerly
now?
known as Dwarger.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. There's some that changed and some didn't, and I'm trying to get it back into my vocabulary. They believe that they can call it up, usually to the ruin of their own settlements. The deep gnome, right? I hope that's right. Have also witnessed it, and perhaps not yet in their own areas and domiciles. The book, known as Way of the End Names, includes a description of the beast, stating that it rears up like a snake about to strike. That's it. Just a big graboid.
And it's still alive.
Yep, still there. Just
Underground somewhere. Just
tunneling
living his
around.
best life. Now, this is the one that came up a couple times earlier that was summoned by the serpent folk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right.
This one
Yep,
seems to be able
and
to be
then-
summoned more.
And then ate all of them because the hubris of their actions.
Do you want to take Kothagaz, Sam?
Sure. So, Kothagaz, the Dance of Disharmony, was first spotted near Old Azita, then a city in Ninshibur. Poor Ninshibur. Just wrong place at all times. Hathgata, the Ninshiburite, also described Kothagaz as a pus of raw and bursted wounds in their list of the spawn of Rovagug.
Oh, good God.
A bite
Very
from
visceral
Kothagaz.
imagery there.
A bite from Kothagaz is blamed for the disfigurement and madness of the gold dragon Trilucan of the Narhari Desert. Oh my god, I'm going to butcher this word. That's too many A's. The squabbling Mahajanapadas united for the first time, but were overwhelmed one after the other in a desperate fight against the beast. The legendary hero Kibin Sald, whom the current Maharaja claims as an ancestor, is said to be a descendant from these rulers. The fighting continued until the legendary psychic Vanidapati confronted Kothagaz. Psychics, occultists, sorcerers, and countless common people lent Vanidapati their strength through meditation and prayer, and legend claims her psychic avatar stood as tall as a mountain to rip Kothagaz to pieces. It is said that the battle claimed 1 million Vudrani lives, but ultimately the hero priest cast it into the ocean and then boiled the ocean, to be sure, weakening it to the point where the creature's heart could be extracted. The heart is now in 101 pieces, and the largest is said to lie beneath Padaskar on Jalmaray. Yeah, so maybe every city's got one of these.
Beneath a city.
I mean, you want an Armageddon, that's how you get an Armageddon.
What zombie? Yeah, that's how you get zombies. That's how you get
Yeah,
zombies.
well-
Because what's gonna happen is Rovagug's gonna break free, or Rovagug's gonna the celestial bodies are gonna align, and dude's just gonna think really hard, and all of a sudden every single one of his spawn who are underneath cities are gonna be like, nope, I'm awake, and I just got regeneration 150 just because Daddy got angry.
All that happens is
Some-
Rovagug taps the cage, just rattles his cage a little bit.
Real quick, I wanna talk about this too, because Kothagaz, the appearance of Kothagaz is something. Yeah, it's something. So it's gargantuan. It's gargantuan in size. It's humanoid, but the abdomen is that of a slug. It has a shell on its back of a horned beetle. It has veiny wings, kind of like, think like translucent wings that are veiny. 4 arms. Each one of them is pincered. Its maw is its head. So it has a maw for a head. And then on top of that maw are dozens of eyes. Like, that is...
Oh, that artwork is intense. I hadn't seen this one before.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's a Zerg.
Which brings us to the last, but not the least. Well, actually, probably the least of the spawn, because this little guy's only level 20. Only. And that would be Zotani the Firebleeder. And Zotani emerged from the barrier wall in the Mwangi Mountains and began to lay waste to the nation of Katapesh. Its tail spread far, and many heroes sought to defeat it, but none were prepared to face a spawn of Rovagug. Zotani survived numerous attempts to bring it down, including freezing magic being applied to him, being dropped from an incredible height, and immersion in the Obari Ocean. The people of Katapesh fled their cities in fear, becoming nomads that would never dare to settle. In around 2100 AR, the Legion of Wands, comprised of genie binders from Katapesh, sand mages from Osirian, archmages from Nex, and others from across Garund, formed, and in 2104, the Legion trapped him in the Brazen Peaks of Katapesh. So, for once, not buried under a city.
Just a few miles north of the capital city of Katapesh.
Actually, no. I had to check a map, but it's actually on the other side of the country from the capital city.
I think it matters.
No, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't matter. But at least this one's not under a city. After a battle lasting a day and a night, which saw their ranks burnt away by Zotani, they defeated it. The Firebleeder fell, buried by searing ice in its victim's bones. Zotani's remains lie in the volcanic caverns beneath Pale Mountain, whose name is said to come from the bones of the tribes the bones of those who gave their lives to defeat it. And I know I said earlier when we started talking about the spawn that I was going to bitch about Zotani. I still will, but that will be saved for Spoiler Corner.
So, Sam, you said it right. Ninja Bar has just got the shit end of the stick this entire time. Like, what did they do to piss off Rovagug? Rovagug's like,
they made the mistake of spreading a country near the pit of Gormuz.
Probably.
That's just a bad idea.
They're all worshippers of Sarenrae.
You know, whose bright idea is to be like, okay, so like 5 miles away, there's a giant mountain of shit. This is a good place to start a city. Before we move on and wrap up and move on to Spoiler Corner, there is a unique outsider that is associated in Inner Sea Gods. Galulabda? Does anybody want to tackle that person?
Oh, the gibbering mouther?
Is that what it is?
Galulabda? Galulabda? Yeah, basically it's just a really, really crazy, very violent gibbering mouther.
Oh, okay. That makes sense why that would be a unique outsider associated with Rovagug.
It's the one gibbering mouther that gibbers and mouths the hardest.
They describe it as a horrifying amalgam of broken wings and melted steel that has all the abilities of a gibbering mouther.
Then there's Gray Stag Devourer, which is a lesser spawn, which is just a crab-like creature with many heads that is hunting the crown of the world. which is an Irrison.
All right. Anything else we want to tackle before we move on to spoiler corner? Are you on mute, Cori?
I sure am. Do we want to quick do boons and curses?
Oh shit, you're right. Boons and curses. And I suppose we should probably do obediences too.
Didn't we talk about the obedience? Thought we did.
Oh yeah, we did. Destroy 10 gold pieces. That's right.
Is that the same in 2E? That was the 1E obedience.
2E doesn't have obediences.
Oh, right.
Yet. They might be coming in the new Gods book next year. Let's hope. I will take boons. Rovagug's minor boon is that your attack becomes more destructive. One time, one of your failed or successful attacks instead becomes a critical hit. And your weapon or unarmed attack gains the deadly D12 trait for this attack, replacing any other deadly trait that it already had. Rovagug typically will grant this boon when a critical hit could destroy something precious or significant. Moderate boon is you can devour all. Your mouth grows into a horrible circular insectile maw of needle-like teeth. You gain a bite attack that deals 1d8 piercing damage. Additionally, you can stomach eating anything that you can fit down your throat, even rocks or small objects. You gain a +4 status bonus to any saves resulting from eating something, including diseases, poisons, or other ingested effects. This doesn't allow you to digest magic items that would otherwise be difficult or impossible to destroy, such as cursed items or artifacts.
So not like that purple worm.
And then the major boon is you can crack the surface of Golarion, accelerating the release of the rough beast. You gain Quaking Stomp as a the Quaking Stomp Barbarian feat, no matter what your class is.
Yeah, still no swallow whole.
Yeah,
Sorry,
a little bit
sorry,
disappointed
Ellie.
that the moderate boon doesn't allow you to swallow whole.
Sorry, Ellie.
Oh, you can if you're big enough.
All right, for curses, minor curses, whenever you're imprisoned, you thrash and shake as your mind fills with desperation. Mechanically, what does that equate to is basically anytime you get restrained or, like, legitimately imprisoned, you are also considered clumsy 2 and stupefied 2. That sucks. Like, legitimately, that sucks.
Yeah, that's
Because
brutal.
escape is your unarmed strike or acrobatics or athletics. So it forced you to use athletics because your acrobatics now just took a -2 because of the clumsy. Oof, that sucks. Your moderate curse. Your destructive rage seeks to remain unbound. Any armor you wear automatically becomes broken. Other items in your possession occasionally become broken over time. So basically your armor becomes broken, forcing you to repair it. And then your GM just gets to fuck with you and be like, okay, how much time has passed? Oh yeah, that's broken now too. Alright, yeah, your sword? Yeah, that's broken now. It's been a week. Oh shit, I'm sorry. Yeah, your gun's broken.
Your goggles of night are no more.
Oh yeah, and you just happen to be in the Dark Lands. Sorry.
And it's anathema to your god to fix any of this stuff.
That's
Ooh.
true. It is anathema. Oh my god,
You're in
that's
a
right. You
tough
can't get it
spot.
fixed.
Just be John Wick.
I
Pick
feel
up
bad for
everywhere
an
else's
inventor of Rovagug.
Oh god.
I mean, if you're an inventor of Rovagug, you're asking for the curses.
weapon. You're asking for it.
And your major curse is you are useful only as a beacon of destruction. Mechanically, what does that mean? You're permanently confused, rampaging against anything and everything that you see. You deal an additional 18 damage with your unarmed and weapon strikes.
Which sounds great until you realize that most of that damage is going to your allies.
That's a one for an NPC or something, though.
Yeah.
Just something that really, really upset Rovagug, and now it's just an unstoppable monster.
An inventor with the weapon invention.
Mm-hmm. Constantly blowing up.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
I do love the boons and curses. They are delightful. I don't ever want to get hit with a curse. Ever.
No. Good Lord, no. All right. So real quick, before we move on to spoiler corner, for next month, our deity is going to be Erastil. Used to be lawful good. The god of community and family. And we are going to be joined by Emily Campbell from the Hideous Laughter podcast, who played a dwarven cleric of Erastil. So she will be coming at us with some good knowledge on playing a character who worshipped Erastil. Before we move on to spoiler corners, Sam, how about you hit us? Where can our listeners find you and your show?
You can find us on any podcatcher at Pod Against the Machine. You can find us at podagainstthemachine.com, the perpetually under construction website. You can find stuff that I write on podagainstthemachine.substack.com. And yeah, that's it. We've got a Discord and all the social media. It's all Pod Against the Machine. The name is consistent throughout.
Isn't there something that's Pod versus Machine somewhere?
Yeah, Pod versus Machine was our Twitter address, which is mostly silent these days.
Yeah, same. Yeah, we're mostly active on BlueSky these days anyway.
Yeah, same here.
All right.
And Cori.
Can find my writing and editing at womenwriteaboutcomics.com, at sidequest.zone, at comicsbeat.com. Can occasionally hear me as the voice of Besmara on 25 North, or as the wonderful GWOW on 50 North.
Yeah, we're trying to schedule the next adventure. It's just holiday season scheduling is rough. But I assure you, listeners, there is another Goblin adventure coming. I have it prepped and ready. I've read it. It's good. It's in the pipe to go. We just need to get everybody lined up to actually record it and schedule it.
The BBEG of all tabletop groups.
It's true. All right, Mike.
You can find me. I'm actually on 25 North too as Grand Admiral, maybe Admiral Lupus Gallo. Who knows? I don't know. Jason, you know. I'm just gonna say with a smile, Grand Admiral. Fuck it, I'll take it myself.
How churlish of you!
But I mean, you picked the right person to play the asshole of the story. So, yeah. Other than that, I'm just on a bunch of Discords near you. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just join a bunch of Discords that I don't know about yet. Yeah, other than that, I'm just happy to be here. Happy to be back. Now I'm on days. I'm not a night stalker. I'm not a vampire anymore. I'm a daywalker, which is weird. I don't like this. The sun's a weird thing for me to deal with. But yeah, I also play Rovagug, the old ass goblin barbarian fighter on 50 North. And I was going to pitch a thing for Jason, but I'll do it now just to say, Jason, are you familiar with the show Below Deck?
No, I'm not.
Okay, real quick. It's basically the real world, but on like a luxury cruise ship, like a luxury like yacht, like super yacht, in like the Mediterranean or Australia or like New Zealand or wherever. I was thinking it'd be hilarious if I did a below deck Indigo Isles.
Mm.
You know, just a random ass ship with just the crew underneath. It's just kind of a fun, just a joke idea I had that would probably turn from a 1-shot to an 8-shot, which is what happens to everyone. Just something to think about.
All right, and for me, you know, if you're listening to this, you know me, Jason, GM of 25 North. You can find us anywhere you want by either 25 North or 25 North Podcast. If you like this show, share it with friends, share it with family, share it with anybody else that you think would like a talk show on Golarion lore. Because honestly, that is how we get more listeners, and really, that's what we all want: is more listeners and more people to chat with in our communities, more people to nerd out with, and talk about Golarion lore. Because, hey, that's what we do as nerds, is we nerd out about shit we like. So go ahead, share this, and we are going to be spoiling what JPs and adventures.
Legacy of Fire and Age of Ashes are the two that I know about that Rovagug has a paw print on.
All right. So if you don't want Legacy of Fire, Legacy of Ashes, Legacy of Fire and Age of Ashes spoiled, well, we will see you next month. All right. Which one do we want to tackle first?
I mean, I think we kind of have to tackle Legacy of Fire first, because the events of Legacy of Fire are what caused the events of Age of Ashes that we'll talk about.
Ooh, fascinating. So Legacy of Fire is actually the AP that I was going to run as a podcast prior. So this is a bit behind the scenes lore on 25 North for you listeners. Before Jewel of the Indigo Isles came out and was announced, I was going to run a Legacy of Fire converted to 2nd edition Pathfinder podcast. I had all the books. I read all the books. I was working on converting monsters and trying to find maps. And that was what 25 North was going to be. And I have no idea what the name was going to be at that point, but it was going to be a Legacy of Fire actual play podcast, because there had been only one at that point, and the one that was done is no longer available online. I scoured the internet for it, and our buddy Jason Lillis also scoured the internet for it, because he was the one who told me that this group did it. And their website is no longer up, and the feed is no longer active, and those MP3s are gone. So that was going to be what we ran, but then Jewel of the Indigo Isles was announced, and this is where we find ourselves now. So Legacy of Fire is still one that I want to run at some point, eventually. So it's the prep work's there. It's always in my back pocket for a second show. Should we get enough Patreon support? So
That's like me and Emerald Spire. I have Emerald Spire prepared, ready to go. I just don't have a group that wants to play it in 2nd edition.
Yeah, dude, Super Dungeons, Mega Dungeons are tough. Anyway, yeah, so the spawn of Rovagug are huge in
No pun
Legacy of
intended.
Fire.
They're actually gargantuan.
Beat me to it. I was going to say
As a
colossal.
matter of fact, the whole bit that we did about the 6th spawn of Rovagug, a lot of that information came from the back matter in Legacy of Fire. So that's where a lot of the lore came from, is some of the back matter of Legacy of Fire. Except the one Cori that you bitched about.
Yeah. So in Legacy of Fire, like, forgive me if I'm wrong, I've not read Legacy of Fire, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
But aren't there people trying to raise Zotani in that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't successfully raise Zotani, thanks to the PCs.
Right. How spoilery do we want to get here? I could tell you the exact reason why.
We're in spoiler corner, I think.
Yeah.
Gloves are
so
off.
There's the reason is out of love. So this dude basically falls in love and with this, not really a goddess, but this powerful djinn, and she doesn't think anything of him. And he gets it in his head that, hey, if I become stronger and more powerful, she will recognize me and she'll see me, senpai. And so this is how he goes about doing it, is he wants to legitimately siphon the power out of a spawn of Rovagug.
Smart.
Yeah.
That always works, right?
Right? Because, I mean, I've said this a number of times. The Legacy of Fire is a tragic love story. And that's one of the reasons why I've really wanted to run it, is because tragic romance, I think, hasn't been done and could be done really well with the right group. And that's one of the reasons why I do really want to run it. But yeah, that answers your question.
Yeah, so in Legacy of Fire, they don't successfully bring back Zotani, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
Age of Ashes was the first 2E AP, as I'm sure most of you know. And as such, it served as a round the world tour of places and people and things that had been touched on in the previous 10 years of canon. In the 3.5 years and the first edition years. You know, you go to Ravenel, which was founded after Hell's Rebels. You go to the Mwangi Expanse, near where Serpent Skull took place, and things like that. Book 5 of Age of Ashes takes place in Katapesh, which is where Legacy of Fire took place as well, and it's where Zotani is currently buried in the mountains. And one of the encounters in Book 5 is not with Zotani itself, but with spawn of Otani. So spawn of Rovagug. They're nasty little fire centipedes, just like Zotani is. Much smaller than Zotani, but still nasty and still a high-level threat, because at this point you're levels 17, 18, somewhere around there, and you're fighting them. And then you get to Book 6. And in Book 6, you're going through, right at the end of the book, you're going through all of these gates in a demi-plane, and all of the gates correspond with the previous books that you played. So there's a gate for Book 1, there's a gate for Book 2, there's a gate for Book 3, and all of them have a high level 20 threat for you to deal with that corresponds to the threats that you saw in the book that you're rehashing here. When you get to the gate for Book 5, you emerge in a demi-plane that looks like a post-apocalyptic Katapesh at the foot of the mountains where Zotani has broken free. And there's lava everywhere, and there's broken earth everywhere. And then out pop, not Zotani, but 3 Zotanis. 3 unique spawn of Rovagug. Level 20 creature. Impossible to kill because it has a regen that can't be shut off, just like any other spawn of Rovagug. I'm a little salty, you may hear that in my voice. I am currently playing in Book 6 of Age of Ashes. Currently in the middle of this encounter as we record this message.
Have you tried channeling the full power of Nethys?
Not yet. Maybe I should.
Have you tried the civilian cannon? I heard that works. The civilian cannon.
Yeah. So what happens here is Dahak, the evil god of dragons, is imprisoned inside this gate and is influencing all of the other gates. And his influence on this one was to just spawn 3 of these. And, luckily I have a benevolent GM who was like, we can't kill it if it has regeneration that can't be shut off. So I'm going to change that to fast healing. And then after we got our asses thoroughly kicked by 3 of them and only escaped because our psychic at level 20 cast 2 mazes on 2 of them, leaving us to fight 1, and we gated the hell out of there to recover and recuperate and to re-prepare spells that actually will be effectual against it. She decided that the other 2 just couldn't make their way back from the maze because of how the demi-plane works. So now we only have to fight 1. Which is still going to be a challenge, but
Yeah, no shit.
not an unbeatable challenge.
1 spawn of Rovagug, not 3 this time.
Right.
I wonder.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say, you're supposed to die at that encounter? Because that just seems like it was meant for you to... It's just over.
Like, it's not even the last encounter of the book. It's not the boss fight.
No.
It's not even the fight before the boss fight. We have 2 fights after this one.
It's run. It's the run fight. Hey, we can't win this. Run. It's a gargoyle fight. It's 5 gargoyles. That's what that is.
To be fair, we did talk our way out of one of the end fights where we convinced the guy that we would have had to fight, which would have been a level 20 wizard with 2 ancient red dragons as pets. We convinced him to just go through the portal, and it was in his stat block that if he goes through a portal, he just vanishes, if you can convince him to do that. So we successfully managed to not fight that one. But then we walked right into Zotani. And Zotani. And Zotani.
Zotaniception.
Yes, we were inside Zotani, too. Because unlike followers of Rovagug who can't get Swallow Whole with his boon, Zotani absolutely has Swallow Whole.
So I don't think there's any other adventure where you fight a spawn, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't think they come up anywhere else so far. I mean, a bunch of them have stat blocks, but they're not in adventures, mostly because you're never strong enough to fight them.
Yeah, there are a couple that are statted out in the Inner Sea Bestiary, and there are plot hooks galore in Mythic Realms in the Pit of Gormaz section to allow you to write a story to fight them, but there is no canon story to fight them other than the 2. I'm kind of wondering if War of Immortals might have.
Yeah.
Like, now that we have kind of pointed out, hey, these are all under city. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what War of Immortals...
Yeah. So the ones that aren't, like, asleep under cities are, like, legitimately out there. And nobody knows where they are. Like, well, one's in the Darklands somewhere, and the other one's flying around somewhere.
And one's in a mountain.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just
It's
waiting
just like,
for its
okay.
call.
Well, one adventure's going into the Darklands, and then we have a book that's taking place on an airship coming out. A rule book the whole thing is like on an airship.
Oh.
When did the genie grant my other 2 wishes?
just like, okay. And if they do shelve the Tarrasque, might we be seeing a new spawn? Is that what causes the War of the Immortals?
I'm kind of thinking that War of Immortals might have something to do with Rovagug now.
Yeah, a new spawn? Or
with Giddy dying and people making bets that it's Sarenrae.
No. No.
And the way Paizo described it on one of the only live stream I actually caught talking about it, which I think was for the playtest for the 2 new divine classes, they said it's the War of Immortals is triggered by a god being torn apart in the skies over Golarion, and like pieces of it raining down.
Yep,
definitely Sarenrae. Never mind. I take that back. You're probably right. And it was the sky thing. That's why.
I still want it to be Asmodeus, but now that I'm thinking about it, that would make an epic adventure path with spawns of Rovagug and Holy War and Dead Sarenrae, and I don't want it to be true, but
like Volnagar is ripping apart Sarenrae above the skies of Golarion. Whew.
It would have to take all of them to
well, yeah, for sure. Like
deity,
something would
right?
have to significantly depower Sarenrae.
Or they would have, or they could get powered up,
her.
or they would get powered up drinking the blood of Rovagug, maybe.
Maybe Rovi dies too.
Maybe they're linked together. Maybe it's the kill switch.
Maybe Rovagug dies and empowers his spawn, and they get stronger.
Along with followers, and that's what brings Mythic to the evil side of the campaign as well.
Or maybe Rovagug does die, but they need to have Rovagug in the dead vault, so Sarenrae takes her place. That's still technically death,
Rovagug
right?
and Sarenrae fighting forever inside the dead vault.
In the cage.
Perpetually
in
fighting.
the cage. Yep.
Hell in the Cell.
Like the one encounter in
I love you, Sam.
Like that one encounter in Jewel of the Indigo Isles, where it's just that construct and that ooze just perpetually fighting forever.
Constantly getting healed.
Because they can't kill each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been Speculation Corner.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Well, I mean, that's why we play this game, right? That's why we're all
Sometimes it
GMs.
happens.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right. Anything else, folks? All right.
I don't think so.
Well, I guess we will call it here. It's been over 2 hours. This is another.
Yeah.
This is another over 2 hour episode. So.
There's a lot of meat on those bones.
Yeah, there was. We'll see you all.
All right.
Later.